This is Sarah, and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to make my easy fingerless glove. You can call them wrist warmers, texting gloves, or whatever you want to call them. It's an easy crochet pattern where your fingers are open. They make a nice glove to wear if you're sitting waiting at a hockey game and you want to crochet. Now you can find this crochet pattern on my blog, and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. What you're going to need to make yourself a set of fingerless gloves is some worsted weight number 4 yarns. Now this is Red Heart Super Saver. It's called Blue Fleck, and they have quite an array of fleck yarns. They have green and brown and beige and white. And I really like them for this sort of project because you don't get just a solid color. See all those pretty flecks in there? But you can use any worsted weight number 4 yarn that you have on hand, and you're going to need about 3 ounces to make a set. You'll need your scissors, of course. You'll need a needle for weaving in your end, and then you'll need a crochet hook. And we're stitching today with our eye, and this crochet hook is a 5.25 crochet hook. Sometimes you'll have an eye that is a 5.5. Both of them will work. Just watch your gauge so that you make them both the same size. And then another thing you need is a tape measure. And the reason I like to have a tape measure around when I'm making 2 of one project, 2 hands or booties with, you have to make 2 for 2 feet, is so that I make sure that I keep my gauge the same for both of them so that one isn't bigger than the other. And also I'm going to show you how to do some adjusting to make it smaller or larger, and it's a good idea to have that tape measure on hand. We're going to be starting with making the ribbed band, and then we're going to do the body of the glove, working our way up. And one thing to know is that there is not a right or a left on this glove. You can slide it on your hand, just stick your thumb through the hole that way, or you can do your right hand. So you're going to make 2 of these exactly the same. Super cool, huh? All right, let's go ahead and get started. Got my yarn here. We're going to make our slip knot. And we're going to chain 13 chains. Whoops. Remember to chain this initial 13 chains just a little bit loose so that your end of your cuff isn't puckered, because what we're going to be doing is stitching the rows this way and making a straight piece, and then we'll be stitching it together with single crochets to form a tube. And when you meet those 2 ends up, you don't want one side to be all puckered up. So make sure your initial chain of 13 is just a little bit loose. I've got 13 chains here. We're going to begin stitching a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. Now never count that loop on your hook. Here's your first chain, and we're going to start in the second. So we'll go in that second chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through those 2 loops. And we'll do this all the way across, and we'll have 12 single crochets. 1 single crochet in each of the chains. And remember, we started with 13, we skipped the first one and started in the second chain, and so that's why we have 12 single crochets. Now, the length of this is going to be approximately 4 inches. Let me do my last single crochet here. I'm going to chain 1, and this is the way that it should look. Now, if you're doing this for a man or a woman even that has a longer wrist, you may want to add some additional chains. Let me show you. Approximately 4 inches. If you're making this for a child, you may want to take out a few chains just to make it a little bit shorter. All right, let's do row 2. We're going to be doing what's called stitching in the back loop only. Now, if you look at the top of your chain, you have loops on the front and loops on the back. The loops that are facing you are your front loops. The loops that are facing away are your back loops. And we're going to be stitching right in this first single crochet because our chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So we'll go in the back loop of that first single crochet and stitch a single crochet. And we'll do this all the way across. And you'll see this ridge forming on the front. One single crochet in each of the 12 single crochets, stitching in the back loop only. We're going to be doing the entire band of our fingerless glove, making a ribbed band, stitching rows in the back loops only. Chain 1 and turn. Then you'll notice there's an indentation on this side and there's a ridge on this side, and that's exactly the way that it should look. Let's do the next row. We chained 1, we turned, and again we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of the chains across. And you can see a ridge forming on this side now. And if you look on the back, you have a ridge and then you have an indentation, and that's exactly the way that it should look. Let me grab the glove. We have ridges and indentations, ridges and indentations, and each one of those is 2 rows, the indentation and then the ridge. Alrighty, let's go ahead and finish this row, stitching those single crochets in the back loops only. Make sure you count your stitches because sometimes it's easy to lose a stitch or gain a stitch when you're making a ribbed cuff. And each row should have 12 single crochets stitched in the back loop only. Chain 1 and turn. We finished that row, chain 1 and turn. And this is the way the cuff will be stitched. Now, if you're making this for say a medium-sized person with a wrist of about 8 inches, you're going to need to do 26 total rows. So we've already got 1, 2, 3, so you'll need 23 more rows. And that's going to measure about 8 inches for an 8-inch wrist. If you're making this for a child or someone with a smaller wrist, you'll want to subtract 3 rows for 2 inches. And then if you're making this for someone, say, with a larger wrist, you'll want to add 3 rows for 2 inches. All right, and that's how you adjust the length around the wrist. 2 inches equal 3 rows. All righty, so I'm making mine the medium size, and so I'm going to just continue to stitch 1 single crochet in the back loop of each single crochet up through row 26. I completed my 26 rows, and you can see it measures right about 8 inches, and that's where I wanted it to be. And it's a good idea to measure as you go and make sure that the cuff fits. All right, and just to give you a hint again on how to count those rows, we're going to count by twos: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, and 26, because you have the outside row and the inside row, which forms those ridges and indentations. Just a little tip. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our cuff and fold it over. We're going to go through the stitch on this side and the stitch on this side, grab that loop and pull it through. And now we're going to stitch it together. And again, if you made this first initial chain a little too tight, you're going to have some puckering. That's why it was important to stitch that initial row just a little bit loose, not too tightly on the chain. All right, so we'll go right in that first stitch and stitch a single crochet. And we're going through both thicknesses to form a tube. And you should have 12 stitches because we stitched 12 single crochets across. And we want to keep that right on track. And you can see it almost looks like what we've already got going on here with the ridge. So just continue across, make sure you have 12 stitches, stitching it into a tube. I've stitched those 12 stitches across, forming the tube, and this is the cuff of my glove. All right, so now we're going to turn it up, and we're going to be stitching around the top of these stitches. Now we have 26 rows plus the one we added is 27. And what we're going to be doing is stitching one single crochet in the end of each of the rows. This can be a little bit tricky. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make a chain 1, and then we'll go right in that next row, stitching right in the end a chain 1. And what you'll do is you'll have a stitch in the indentation and then a stitch in the top of the ridge row. Then you'll stitch one in the indentation row and one in the ridge row. And the reason it works out that way is because where you have an indentation on this side is where you have a ridge on this side. However many rows that you stitched plus the 1 is how many single crochets you should have at the top of your glove. I did 26 rows plus the joining row, which is 27. So I'm going to need 27 single crochets around the top of my glove. And that's the way yours will be as well. If you made it smaller with less rows, you're going to have less single crochets. If you made it larger, you're going to have more single crochets. The number of single crochets should be the same as the rows plus the 1 where we did the joining row. So I'm just going to continue around stitching a single crochet in the end of each row all the way around, and I'll end up with 27 single crochets. I've completed my row of single crochets, making sure I have 27 single crochets. I'm going to join to the first single crochet with a slip stitch and chain 3. Our chain 3 will count as our first double crochet on this row. And what we're going to be doing is just placing one double crochet in each of the single crochets around. Yarn over, go through the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. We're going to place a double crochet in each of the single crochets around, and then we'll join to the top of that chain 3 that we started with. And your stitch count again should be 27 stitches. We're not going to be adding or subtracting any stitches for the remainder of this project. I completed that row of double crochets. I'm going to join to the top of my chain 3. There we go. With a slip stitch, and I'm only going to chain 1. This next row we're going to stitch a row of single crochets. Our chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so we'll go right in that first stitch and stitch a single crochet. And we'll just stitch a single crochet in each of the double crochets around. We'll do this all the way around, and then we'll join to the first single crochet. I completed this row of single crochets. I joined to my first single crochet and then I chained 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to repeat these 2 rows that we just did. We're going to do a row of double crochet and then a row of single crochet. And then we're going to form a row with the thumb hole. So just repeat what we just did, a row of double crochet and a row of single crochet. So I repeated the double crochet row and the single crochet row. Now it's time to start forming the thumb hole. And what we're going to do, we chained 3, we're going to stitch a double crochet in the next 23 stitches because our chain 3 counted as our first double crochet. And we're only doing 23. Now, that's because I stitched a 27 stitch row. If you added or subtracted stitches for the size that you're making, you're going to need to leave the last 3 stitches unworked, and then we're going to turn. And that's where we're going to form the thumb hole. So I stitched my 23, which would be 24 stitches because my chain 3 counts as my first double crochet. I'm going to leave these 3 double crochet stitches unworked, and I'm going to turn, chain 1 and turn. Normally we don't turn on this, but that's what we're going to do in order to form our hole. So I'll go right in that first double crochet and stitch a single crochet, and then we'll stitch single crochets back around this row. And you'll have the same number, of course, that you had on the previous row. I have 24 double crochets, so I'm going to have 24 single crochets. And then when we get back around, I'll show you how to form that thumb hole. I've stitched back around my single crochets because remember, at the end of this row we left 3 stitches unworked. Then we chained 1 and turned and stitched a single crochet back around. Now we're going to chain 3, and we're going to join to that first single crochet. Get in there, there we go, with a slip stitch, and we're going to chain 3. Okay, now we're going to be turning back and make our first 3 stitches those 3 chains. So we have our double crochet here, and then we're going to stitch 1 double crochet in each of those 3 chains. And now we have our thumb hole. And now we're going to just continue on around stitching 1 double crochet in each of the double crochets around. Now keep in mind, when we joined and we chained 3, that double crochet counted as the first double crochet. So don't accidentally add an extra double crochet on this row. So I'm just going to continue around stitching 1 double crochet in each double crochet around, And remember, don't place a double crochet in this first double crochet because our chain 3 counts as that double crochet, and then we'll join to the top of our chain 3. I joined my double crochet to the top of the chain 3 and I chained 1. Now this is where, if you need some length, you can add some additional rows of double crochet to make it longer for maybe someone who wants that glove to go a little higher up on their fingers or just has a longer hand. All right, now to finish off, we're just going to place a single crochet in each stitch around. And what I like to do on these last 2 rows is stitch it just a little bit tighter, and it gives us a nice edge and helps the glove come in just a smidge so that it looks nice and tidy. So I'm working around those double crochet stitches, just stitching 1 single crochet in each stitch around. We're going to work around and join to our first single crochet, and then we're going to repeat that. So we have 2 rows of single crochet on the top of our glove. I completed that row of single crochet, and now I'm doing the last row of single crochets on the top edge of my glove. Now, like I said, if you needed to add length, you could go ahead and do that by adding more rows of double crochet and then ending with 2 rows of single crochet at the top. And that's another place where you might want to use that tape measure and make sure that both of your gloves are the same length. Your tape measure is your friend, making sure that everything works out. It's very frustrating to make 2 booties or 2 gloves or 2 socks or 2 of anything and them not be the same size. I know, I've done it. Alrighty, looks like I'm almost around here on this last row of single crochet, and don't forget to pull this one in just a little bit snug too. Alright, I'm going to go right in that first single crochet, make my slip stitch, and cut my yarn. I'm going to take my hook in that next stitch and pull that loop behind and then tie off. That way you get a nice clean looking edge. And all we have to do now is weave in these ends. Now, I haven't added any buttons, I haven't added any ribbons, flowers, hearts, or anything to this fingerless glove pattern. And that's because I wanted it to just be a basic pattern that you can embellish and fancy up or not yourself. Sometimes I like to just choose a yarn that I really like and let that yarn be the star instead of the embellishments. Now I'm going in, I rolled the cuff up so that I can weave in this last end. Don't forget to get that last end, because boy is it annoying to have it tickle the inside of your arm. Alrighty, so now we're all woven in. And here's my other glove. So I'm all done. They fit great. And by making these out of worsted weight number 4 yarn, you can also toss them in the wash machine and dryer. And like I said, they're just a simple fingerless glove pattern that you can embellish however you want to, add buttons, ribbons, bows, appliques, whatever you want to do. And another thing I wanted to remind you is that if the cuff, I like it long because though it can go inside the coat, but if you don't want it like that, you can always roll up that cuff to make it just a little bit shorter if it's annoying you. And that's the neat thing about the stretchy cuff. It's very stretchy. And that's why probably you won't have to do a lot of adjusting for any of the adults or youth in your family because of how stretchy the cuff is and how easy it is to slide on and off your arm. I hope you'll make a bunch of these in a lot of different colors, and make sure you post some pictures to my Posh Pooch Designs Facebook page. I love to see the things that you make with my patterns.